two kind of breeds for this. One
Yeah.
is like the standalone event app. So, for example, I worked on CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, and I managed the mobile app project there. And so we built that. We used Eventbase as the partner to make that happen. Not anybody that downloads the app can see that. And so Eventbase, they are an mobile event app company. That is all they
Right.
do. And anybody can contract with them to configure their app using their product, and then there's other like more SaaS products like a Swoogle, a Jiffle. Now there's a whole bunch of like SaaS products, which is the whole kit and caboodle, from registration to the session management to the digital venue to the expo portal. That also includes a mobile app, and your specific event kind of lives in what's called a container app. And so
Yeah.
I've worked
Okay.
on Swoogle events, and so you download the Swoogle app, and then there is your event wrapped in the Swoogle app. And then but the new trend that's starting to happen and that we're seeing a lot more is what's called progressive web apps, which is really this idea that you get rid of the quote unquote old school like downloadable app, and it really is almost like just a wrapper in a super responsive website. That comes with its own sets of challenges around connectivity. We talked about Wi-Fi, and stuff like
Yeah.
that earlier. So making sure that that's going to be appropriately responsive is a separate challenge in and of itself.
Hi, and welcome to the Sunday Lunch Project Manager podcast for Sunday, the 30th of April 2023. This is your host, Nigel Creaser, and today we've got the second part of my interview with Jen Santos, the events PM.
Yeah, I love the idea of being able to having the kind of the courage, to be willing to go back and say, I know I said yes, but right,
Yeah.
I can't, this is my timing, and we're both consultants, right? We both have consulting backgrounds. And so as a consultant, or at least the way I was trained, was you never say no to your client, or it's bad form. You find alternate ways to say no. You say no in a way that's not a no, right? It's like that improv yes and. It's like, yes,
Yeah.
or why don't we explore this idea? Or yes, we can look at doing this, but then we need to, here are our other priorities. Which of these other things do you want to take off my plate to make this happen? Which other things do you want to take out of scope to make this happen? Again, going back to that classic triple constraint. It's, it's time, money,
time cost quality, or time cost scope. It varies in depending
right?
on which ones.
Yeah, so it's like, yes, I can, but then something else doesn't get done. And so what is it that you don't want to get done? And then you put the onus back on the client, to help you figure out how to prioritize so they can get done, they can get their objectives met in the best way possible without you literally killing yourself.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting one, and I can see how suddenly the opposite happened to what would have been in those physical events, where loads of organisations going, oh, we can't afford to do that, or we can't be bothered with getting that bill. That you can only book that what's the name, Super Bowl event place once every 3 months because they've got loads of other stuff going. Suddenly get those massive physical constraints go. And I imagine that a lot of organisations have continued on with that. You'll correct me if I'm wrong. They're going, yeah, we'll carry on. We'll keep on doing these virtual events. Actually, we'll do more of them, because actually the cost and the return compared to investing that big one for us as an organisation, say for example, would have been, for somebody having a smaller organisation, would go, well, that's easier to do and simpler to do. And and I know I work a bit with PMI UK, and they did some fantastic work doing some digital events over the lockdown period, got awards for it, and they've continued on with those digital events, with supplemented with the physical events. But again, in that kind of thing where you're providing essentially pretty much free events to your members, the cost benefit thing kind of just works, because I know how much, because I was involved in the events team, so, which I forgot about in this conversation. It's just recurred to me that I was one of the volunteers on the events team 20 years ago for the Midlands area, and I did get involved in a little bit of that background. And I did know some of the things that weren't working and were working in the background of those things, and finding interesting places to run an event rather than just
Hmm.
another Hilton hotel. No, nothing wrong with Hilton hotels, but do you know what I mean? They're of a kind, of a type. And we ended up doing one in the Botanical Gardens in Birmingham, which was a really interesting event because then you wandered around these hothouses and then into it was very the room where it was very much like your traditional hotel meeting room, but the venue itself outside of that was really interesting. And another one I went to, which wasn't it was a work event actually, was in the Science Museum in Manchester, which again somewhere different. And then another one, just remembering all these different ones that I found it memorable, is Cosford Air Base in the UK, which is a museum, and you've got spaceships and you've got World War One aeroplanes up
Oh wow.
to sort of like fighter jets and things, and it's kind of like
Hmm.
those that ability to be incredibly innovative and finding new events probably changed your industry a bit, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, going to backing up to the part where you talked about when the pandemic started, I mean, because there were no in person events, suddenly digital got the entire event budget, right?
Yeah,
So pre-pandemic, kind of the digital tools in from talking to other event tech pros, we were kind of like the necessary evil. We need to get
yeah,
people registered. We need to have a way to get session scheduled. What is the minimum amount of money that we can spend to make that happen so we can throw all the money at the expo floor,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like
Fair
it's
enough.
not quite that dramatic, but it felt pretty
Yeah, that's
close
fair
to
enough.
that.
Yeah, if we cut
Um,
that corner there, we can have 50 more lights on there, sort of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, then suddenly there's no F&B, there's no transportation shuttles to have to pay for, there's no venue to rent, there's no site visit to pay for, like all these things no longer happen. And so all that money got turned into making the digital
Yeah,
venue the absolute best thing that it could be. And it has been interesting to watch different organizations go back to in person. I've seen some organizations try to go back to in person and they've struggled because their audience actually really likes the virtual experience. I have
yeah,
seen others, like more trade shows. Trade shows, I think, are going to do really well going back to in person because
yeah,
I mean, like you love trade shows, right? Like you live for wandering the expo floor, and a virtual expo is just not the same. So
no,
I'm working on an RFP right now for a client, and so they want a mobile app and a CMS, no digital venue. Nobody used it last year, so we're not even going to try it again this year because people want to be there in person. They need their phone
yeah,
so that they can go around, but
yeah.
they
Makes
don't
sense.
want
Yeah,
to. Yeah.
yeah, it really does make sense. And I suppose it's quite difficult for organisations that have that blended sort of activity. But then
Mm-hmm.
again, I suppose that because you've got to balance, I suppose you've got to look at it and go, right, I've got a trade show and I've got a set of events, and I know people will come for the trade show, but they're not going to pay for the trade show, but they'll pay for the events. But
Mm-hmm.
the other revenue stream of that whole event is the trade show people paying you to be there, because
Right.
that's part of the dynamic, isn't it? But if there's not enough
Mm-hmm.
people there, they're going to be hacked off, and as you say, the
Right.
virtuals aren't going to sell them something. Sell them there'll be a little bit there, but it's not in the same way, is it? But by
Yeah.
having the virtual people, that also supplements the revenue on top of
Yeah.
because there'll be if you've got an event in like say in Houston, and I'm not going to fly out to Houston. In fact, there's a PMI event, a virtual series that's going on at the moment. It's a free one because I'm a PMI member. I wouldn't have flown out to see to do one of those, but I would go to a virtual one of those.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the same sort of thing, isn't it? Some people you'll capture as extra revenue streams in those digital events. It's interesting you talk about the
Yeah.
mobile app. I haven't thought about the fact that obviously within your tech space there, you've got your mobile app and I guess your mobile watch widgets and things like that
Mm-hmm.
potentially that are
Yeah.
part of that whole delivery thing. And I guess those have got to stay up to date with the bang up to date new phones and all the new different
Yeah.
versions of the phones and all that sort of stuff. But is it something you take? You've got a bunch of templates that you use for your sort of phone apps. You pull them together and then you use them, or is it that you've got to go from scratch because you've got to bring that new, unique, new experience to each time, or do you try to tried and tested, or is it a bit of a mix? But
Yeah, it's that's a really good question. Mobile app technology has been changing a lot in the past few years. There's kind of like from a true app, like allow me to download the mobile app out of the app store to my phone. There's kind of like two kind of breeds for this.
Yeah,
One is like the standalone event app. So, for example, I worked on CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, and I managed the mobile app project there. And so we built that. We used EventBase as a partner to make that happen. Not anybody that downloads the app can see that. And so, EventBase, they are an mobile event app company. That is all they
right.
do. And anybody can contract with them to configure their app using their product. And then there's other like more SaaS products like a Swoogle, a Jiffle Now. There's a whole bunch of like SaaS products, which is the whole kit and caboodle from registration to the session management to the digital venue to the expo portal. That also includes a mobile app, and your specific event kind of lives in what's called a container app. And so
Yeah,
I've worked
okay.
on Swoogle events, and so you download the Swoogle app, and then there is your event wrapped in the Swoogle app. And then kind of but the new trend that's starting to happen and that we're seeing a lot more is what's called progressive web apps, which is really this idea that you get rid of the quote unquote old school like downloadable app, and it really is almost like a just a wrapper and a super responsive website that comes with its own sets of challenges around connectivity. We talked about Wi-Fi, and stuff like
Yeah.
that earlier. So making sure that that's going to be appropriately responsive is a separate challenge in and of itself.
Yeah, I imagine that's it, isn't it? If you've got an app on the phone, you're not pulling down data, are you? Or not always. You'll be pulling down some data. There'll be less data. Whereas if you're
Yep.
actually browsing the internet, essentially you've got to have bulletproof reception of
Yep.
some
Yeah.
description. Um,
Yeah,
whereas
exactly. And
once,
like event yeah, some of these app providers, they have an offline mode, right? So like they pull
yeah,
down the data
yeah,
every whatever time, 15 minutes, half hour, and that's cached on the device, which is great. Like traveling internationally, people don't want to necessarily pay for data, right?
no,
You get into a crowded expo, the Wi-Fi might not work.
yeah,
And
ah,
so you need the offline capabilities, and there's a trade-off there that needs to be considered by every event tech pro.
yeah. I never thought about that sort of mobile app stuff. And there's another question I'm going to ask you now, and I don't know if this is going to be a bit off to one side really, but it just made me think about that with the mobile apps and the tech and all that sort of stuff, and with the latest tech trends that are out there at the moment, and Chat
Mhm.
GPT 4 that I've seen coming out, and those technology things. How do you see um, that? Well, two things really: influencing your ability to deliver your projects, um, these event projects, as I see them, and how do you see them? How do you see it being used in for the attendees at these events, and how that might
Mhm.
be used, or is it already happening?
I mean, it's already happening. I mean, I remember years ago, pre-pandemic, right? There was already you could go to events. Some of these tech events, people had the VR helmets, right, and stuff like
Hmm.
that. You could go and you could test some of this stuff out. So that's already been around for quite a while. I think that looking at like VR, AR, location services, Chat GPT, that that it's going to be interesting. I'm not really sure. I have a couple of theories. I think that as much as event organizers would love to start using a lot more AI for predictive services, for personalized recommendations, or truly personalized services, I think that particularly when you start dealing with the larger companies, you're going to run into problems with legal and compliance and privacy and all those sorts
Yeah,
of things that event planners are going to have to try to work through, right? Where I do see some cool stuff potentially happening. And maybe this is the big breakthrough here is like under VR, AR, like when it comes to networking and it comes to meetings. You alluded to this a while back about the idea of not wanting to get on a plane to go to a PMI event. That's one of the things the pandemic was able to do. It was able to make events accessible to a lot more people who
yeah,
couldn't travel, literally can't get on an airplane. They don't have the funding, they can't get away, they have a disability, whatever the case might be. And so we suddenly opened up this whole new world to them. We took Pandora out of the box. And
yeah,
I
yeah.
think as an industry, it would be, I'm going to say it, irresponsible for us to try to close that box again.
Yeah.
Not just from a revenue standpoint, but just from a making the planet better standpoint. I
Yeah.
don't think we should try to close that box again.
Yeah, of course, because obviously the event uh, from a climate point of view, the event,
That
as you
too.
say, flying 20,000 people to a building somewhere that you could deliver the same content as well without flying them there or them flying there. As you say, it's kind of you need to consider it, don't you? You need to be able to say, actually, okay, let's make it a 5,000 people event, make it. But again, there's different pros and cons with all of those sort of
Hmm.
things, isn't it? It's kind of
Yeah.
and it. I kind of sit there thinking about the AR point, like VR, right? It's my own personal view here, and we're kind of going. I told you we're going a rabbit hole somewhere, didn't I? My whole thing about the VR and the goggles in your hands and playing like Ready Player One, that the image of people running around the town like that with their goggles on. I still can't see it myself. Plus the fact I get seasick when I use the damn thing. So it's yeah. So maybe it's an age thing with me. Um, I'm thinking AR. I see differently. I can see the time where a pair of what would look like a pair of safety goggles that have
Hmm.
a screen in there that can augment. And if you are at an event, that augmented reality using those things there is that you won't necessarily always need the physical stuff there. And you'll have John, who's at home, walking along with you in the AR point of view in the corner, having a chat or in that session. Or I can see that kind of thing happening eventually.
Hmm.
It's quite a way away, I think, but I'd be fascinated to seeing that because I think it would be that way. That it adds. There'll be certain things that you can't bring to an event that you'd want to bring to an event, and you could do through the virtual medium. And
Hmm.
I think it's ways of doing it, and it'd be fascinating to see how it how it transpires those changes and
Yeah.
those integrations and kind of how you're using on your phone, going right. What I want to asking Chat GPT, so right, I want to go to a session that will teach me this, right? And I want to find 6 trade shows because I'm interested in doing X, Y, and Z. And being able to take your data from the event, use that kind of engine to go, well, there's the routes on your phone now for you to get that information that you're after.
Yeah.
That experience as an individual going to that event means I'm not wandering up and down the rows picking up pens I don't want and bags that I don't need and leaflets that I don't want because I'll pick them up if they're given to me. If it's free, I'll take them. Do you know what I mean? So it'll save on the environment. It'll save me carrying stuff home and then throwing it away. And it would take me with those people who've got less time because to be fair, those events can be exhausting as well, can't they? As an individual, when you're consuming them, it no matter how enjoyable they are, and I always find in anything like that, certainly on the trade events, I never get to all the places I wanted to look in because I get distracted by other stuff. But if
Hmm.
I had a route round to them that's um, curated for me, but to do that curation on an, if you like say you've got 20,000 people turning up at an event and you've got trade show, to curate it individually by a team is impossible, isn't it? Well, it's not
Right.
impossible, it's just
Yeah.
expensive.
Yeah.
But can these technologies help with that curation and enhance that experience for people? And
Yeah.
I can,
I've been looking in. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's where I really think that, this AI has a lot of potential. We have the data
yeah,
privacy, and then there's also this idea of, this isn't big data when you're talking 20,000 people. 20,000 people may feel like a lot of people, but really, when
yeah,
you talk about like machine learning and stuff, you need a
yeah.
lot bigger
It's not,
data sets to make that
yeah, it's not
relevant. And that's
statistically
something that,
significant, is it?
yeah, we've been struggling with that for a while in the industry, at least on the teams I've been working on, which is like, how do you get good enough data on these people fast enough to make it relevant? And then, particularly
Yeah,
thinking about people, yeah, okay, so Steve's been going to the same event for 7 years and he's job hopped 3 times in there. So, what I knew about Steve 6 years ago is not relevant, particularly to the Steve who I know today.
no,
And it gets really, really difficult. Um, I mean, we're working on it, but I think it's going to be an interesting thing to watch evolve over time. But the tech's getting better and better, and it'll continue to get better and better. And I think there's some
Yeah,
organizations that'll be super happy to adopt it and like be the hey, we're going to try this thing because that's who we are as a company. And then there's going to be other companies that are kind of like, yeah, we're going to see how it goes for them because right, they're just more conservative in their events philosophy. They want
yeah,
to do it, but they need to see somebody else succeed at it first. I mean, it's normal.
yeah. Standard, the early adopter, non-adopters, and this sort of thing, and that whole
Hmm.
thing. So thinking now about because we're coming up on sort of 50 minutes now, kind of thinking about the sort of the audience a little bit, my audience a bit on this.
Yeah.
What what would you how would you describe the key differences between those events that you run and the tech that you deliver for those events to your experience of other projects? What were those? And I know we've got that fixed time scale, but what did you do differently that you compared to what you would have done in a run of the mill project?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that the first thing is, events. You've done some events. That events have a terminology and a flow, just the industry level of industry knowledge required to do an event really, really well is fairly high, right? And
Mm.
there's you immediately start drinking from a fire hose in these things. There's kind of no like way to ease yourself in. There's
Yeah,
no 3 month on ramp period. The way that, when you do dev, you kind of plan, yeah, 90 days to bring them up to speed. No, you get 90 seconds to get up to speed in the events industry. It's just the
yeah,
nature
okay,
of the industry, right? Budgets are always super constrained every single year, do more with less every single year. So that is kind of like one thing is just like being prepared with the terminology is a really big thing to me. And then the other big shift that I really noticed when I went into events is this idea of it takes a village. And there are so
mm,
many different vendor teams that you are going to be working with as you put on this event. It's much more cross company collaboration than I have seen any place else or any other industry that I worked in. I might be collaborating with 20 different companies to get just on the event tech side to get something off the ground, right? Because I have to coordinate with the scanner scanning and transportation and the F&B people and the digital signage people and AV and the video folks. And then maybe my event tech stack itself has 3 or 4 different suppliers on it. And so there's just a lot of different teams involved. And then you figuring out load in and load out times. Anyway, there's all these sorts of pieces that end up influencing the event tech. So, and getting everybody to work together when I'm not going to say it is in their best interest to do so, but not everybody necessarily, like any company, not everybody shows up with this kind of collaboration mindset, right? And so to
yeah.
get everybody on the same page, again, we're village people, get everybody thinking in this kind of we succeed or we fail as a team mentality is definitely been a challenge when you have so many different companies that are all trying to kind of get ahead.
And do you find someone who's the sort of whether they're event director or whatever they're called that lead who's leading the overall event? Do they behave in that project sponsor role, or do they behave in more of a program manager role? How do you see it, or is there a mix?
Yeah, so typically the events I work on, there's like a digital experience lead, right? And so like I'm
Yeah,
almost always on the supplier side. So we'll be doing our supplier thing, and then we've got a digital experience lead that works with the client. And so they are managing the digital experience. And then from there, we have the event owner, the overall event planner, but their job is to get the different kind of work stream leads at a broad level of the word work stream,
yeah,
kind of like working together. So I guess you could think of them, they work in a program management role. If we take it back to
yeah,
traditional like project management, they are the program managers. They have their whole slew of project managers underneath them who have project
yeah.
managers underneath them,
It's
making
like
it all
making a
happen.
film, isn't it? Yeah,
It really is.
that's the thing. I've talked to one guy who's in the film industry, and it's kind of maybe I need to get hold of. I'm not sure whether it would be a producer. I guess it's a producer probably rather than a director to in the film industry to talk to one of them about the same sort of thing because I look at it and I go, yeah, you've got a project there for 18 months to make a film, whether it from the point of script writing to digital effect finalizing and social media promotion straight out. It's a project, isn't it? And
Hmm.
kind of again, I suppose that's, you've got a bit of a launch event with a lot of those as well, and it's
Yeah, no,
similar sort of thing, isn't it?
that's a fantastic analogy that never crossed my mind, but I love it because it has a lot of the very same, actually a lot of the same
Yeah,
elements to it.
yeah,
I
yeah.
take
Well,
notes of
food and
that. What is
beverage
that?
is
They
key for, yeah,
craft table, right? That's what they call it. I
yeah,
think the craft table. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it's interesting. It's that what we see as traditional projects, certainly like me from the IT industry, I'm not sure about others, but the more often, and I suppose it's a little bit towards the way society's changing as well, more things are managed in a mindset of project management and
Hmm.
how using those tools, as I say, it's a life skill. It's not simple. I think the fact that, and I say this nearly every week about the fact that the only place that they haven't really got project managers is on The Apprentice, where they call them project managers, and that's kind of where it just yeah, winds me up a little bit. Not one of them would know what a Gantt chart was if it hit them with a stick. Um, and they are
Love it.
showing off my waterfall skills there rather than my agile. But hey, so I'm just thinking we're just coming up on the hour now. And thank you so much for giving me so much time. It's a fascinating. It's an area that I could think I could sit here and go, right. Okay, I'd love to sit there and see that mission control in the cafe where you're all doing it and seeing you. All right, this has all gone pear shaped. How are we going to solve this? I'd love to be a fly on the wall. I wouldn't want to be responsible for it, but be really interesting seeing all that. If there was, say, for example, there's someone who wanted to get into this kind of industry and kind of get into this, what sort of things would you, what couple of things would you say? And then is there anything else that you wanted to chat about um, just for the last few minutes?
Yeah. So I guess I would say that it is, as you've already heard, a fun, dynamic industry. And I will also say that if you're interested in getting into event tech, you don't necessarily need to be technical. You don't need to have come up through the programmer ranks. You need to be the person that grandma goes to reset the router on the household Wi-Fi. But like that's it. As long as you kind of have good organizational skills, you are an excellent cat herder, aka project manager, um
Hmm.
and you have a technical bent, I think, and you think events would be fun, you could be super super successful doing it. If I can make a plug for my own thing, um
Yeah.
I am launching the Smart Event Academy, which is specifically our first course is Smart Event Foundations, which is a training program and certification program for people that are interested in becoming event tech project managers. We take you through a mock event, using real event tech to kind of get
Oh
people to
wow.
understand the vocabulary, understand the rhythm, understand the attendee slash customer journey, how to manage clients, what all these different work streams are, what a knock is, because I used that phrase earlier and I didn't explain it, network operating center, um, all those sorts of things. And so we have cohorts launching
So
every month.
network,
I think that, what?
that sounds like that sound. I was going to say network operating center. I can imagine that being a that's more like a mission control.
Yes, that's totally like a mission control. I'm never allowed in it.
Yeah,
So there was a oh, it's Jen. No, we're not. No, no, no. She doesn't need to come in. So, anyway, I'm cohort starting every single month. And then
excellent.
you know what? I have really, really enjoyed the conversation. I cannot believe it has been an hour already. I could go like another 2 hours with you just like rat holing on this. So thank you so much for having me here.
Oh, it's been brilliant. So finally, if people want to get hold of you, want to find out more, where's the best place to get hold of you?
I am on LinkedIn all day, every day. Don't, it was just 1 minute. Anyway, don't tell my clients that. And then I'm
I
also
I I,
at,
I know the feeling.
yeah, and then I'm at smarteventacademy.com as well. But LinkedIn is the best way to connect with me directly.
Brilliant, superb. So thank you very much, and good luck with your next event whenever that is coming along. And like I say, it's a fascinating area, and there's so many tangential and so many entirely different elements to it. That's just fascinates me. So thank you very much, and I hope you have a wonderful evening this evening.
Thank you. You too.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Jen. Some of the scale and size of things, and as I've mentioned before, I've always fancied looking behind the curtain of all of the events that I go to and conferences. Nice to get behind there, understand how it all ticks. Come back next week when we'll have another fascinating guest. Cheers now. So this is my final wrap up. Every week you're going to hear this, you're going to get bored of it, but you can always click next podcast if so. If you have enjoyed it, if you listened to this podcast to the end of this show and you think that was great, I'd love to be able to help Nigel out. There are loads of ways you can do it. The first and obvious way is to share the podcast. Send it out to people. If you know colleagues and friends who'd benefit from it, you think they'd enjoy it, just send them the link. Grab one of the links, or send them to www.nigelcreaser.com/podcasts. That's www.nigelcreaser.com/podcasts, and that will push them over to a Linktree link, and it's got all of the different ways they can consume the podcast. If you are feeling generous and have a big bag of cash, you could grab a copy of one of my books. Obviously, they're available in all the usual places, in print and digital. Again, jump on the website, www.nigelcreaser.com/shop, and that will give you a list of all the different ways that you can contribute and grab copies of the book. Also got links to all my guests' books on there as well, where I get a little bit of a kickback from them. If you are of a sporting mind, I have a number through doing some of my judo and running antics. I've managed to secure a few affiliate links and affiliates there as well. So in there, somewhere in the sponsors page, there's links to those as well. So clicking onto those and grabbing if you're looking to get super fit, then that would be fabulous as well, and I get a little kickback from those. I have a Patreon account. It's patreon.com/sundaylunchpm. So again, you can ping something in there, buy me a coffee or whatever. And finally, obviously the most important is coming back, listen again, because the more of you that come back, the more visibility I get, because there's more times that it's downloaded and all the SEO works and things like that. So yeah, that's it. So if you can help me out, I would be much appreciated. If you can't, don't worry about it. Thank you very much. Cheers now. Bye. Well, it's goodbye from me, Nigel Creaser, and it's goodbye from him, the Sunday Lunch PM. Goodbye.